Thank you for joining us today to learn about physical literacy. We have a great presentation scheduled today and a lot of people are on the webinar, so we respectfully ask that everyone mute their phones and computers if you have not done so already. If you need to make a comment or ask a question, please do so in the chat box. The Active Kids would like to welcome our guest speaker, Richard Monette from Active for Life, to help us learn about physical literacy. Richard leads Active for Life, a Canadian initiative dedicated to mobilizing grassroots efforts to show the importance of physical literacy to children. When not educating Canadian moms and dads about the importance of physical literacy, Richard is part of the leadership team at B.Ed, a privately funded organization that supports elite Canadian athletes. He is also a sports psychology consultant to Olympic and professional athletes and consults with business leaders on the value of being purposeful. Richard is the proud papa of two very active kids, as well as an avid minor hockey coach, golfer, and hiker. He and his family live in Banff. Thank you and welcome, Richard.
And now in this day and age, the concept of physical literacy is something that we need to develop in children. So I am the lead of a group called B210, and one of the projects that the B210 group has created back in 2012 is something called Active for Life. And simply put, Active for Life has one purpose, which is to help parents raise physically literate kids. And the reason we do this is that we've discovered through our work with athletes that, well, kids in Canada and actually in most of the Northern Hemisphere, kids are not as active as they used to be, that for many reasons, one being the fact that there are so many telephones and iPhones and iPads and so on, that kids spend a lot of time playing on these handheld devices and are not being active as much as they used to be. So we created Active for Life as what we call a greater good project. So it's privately funded by donors, and the only purpose of Active for Life is really to get Canadian kids moving. And what we've realized over the years is that our reach has gone way beyond our borders, and now Active for Life is a resource for many people around the world. And as you can see on the slide in front of you right now, is that what we offer at Active for Life are basically fun activities, articles, engaging articles, free resources, and all of this has one purpose: to get kids active, healthy, and happy. Now, today I'm going to answer 2 questions, or at least I'm going to try to answer 3 questions for you. The first one is I'm going to explain what is physical literacy. The second point is I'm going to explain why it's vital for kids today, because I don't know if you're like me, but when I was young, I grew up playing outside a lot, and by doing so, I learned to move. And sometimes when you talk to parents today, their answer is, well, okay, kids don't move as much, but it's simple. We should just tell kids to go outside and they'll move again and they'll play. But it's not that simple, and I'll explain exactly why we need the concept of physical literacy today. And finally, and I'm hoping that I'm going to discipline myself in the first 2 questions and not talk too long, and really spend most of the time sharing resources that are available for free right now for you to use if you want to engage in developing physical literacy in children. So, what is physical literacy? When I was building my presentation, I came up with little questions or comments to myself that I wrote on my slide, and I'll share these with you. When we presented the concept, the words physical literacy to focus groups a few years ago when we started our initiative, we noticed a really interesting reaction from most parents. Their first reaction was one of curiosity. And what we realized by asking them what made these parents curious was that those two words, physical and literacy, didn't really go together. And actually, at one point we were working, we got some help, some consultancy time from an ad agency here in Canada, a big ad agency, and 4 years ago they told us, these two words together will never catch on. But what we realize is that because they create a dissonance, that these two words do not go well together and that they're different, it opens up people's mind. They're curious, they want to know physical literacy, what is that about? And that opening, that curiosity allows us to answer the question and then educate parents about what is physical literacy and why it really matters for children today. So to explain what physical literacy is all about, I'm going to start with a diagram that was created by a university here in Calgary, where I live, by the Center for Child Wellbeing. So this is the university that develops and educates early childhood educators. And their explanation of physical literacy is very appealing to me. It's visual, and basically it comes down to three concepts. It's when people or kids develop the confidence, the competence, and the motivation to move. So this is kind of a, there are some description and definition of physical literacy out there that are much more complicated, but the simplicity of this one really appeals to us at Active for Life. And here's a bit more explanation. For people to become physically literate or to develop physical literacy requires to do many kinds of activities. And I want to also make one point clear. When you were listening to my background early on, my background is in sport, but I'm also a teacher and educator. And I have to say that physical literacy is not about sport. Now, the beauty of physical literacy is that if you have a child that is physically literate, well, there are many benefits in overall through their lifetime. And if these children happen to choose to become athletes, to be physically literate will help them become better athletes. But the main goal, the main purpose of physical literacy is not to develop athletes, but really to provide kids with the physical skills required to be able to move for the rest of their lives. So to do so, you need to develop many kinds of activities. You need to practice many kinds of activities. So one thing we see in today's society is that some kids specialize early in one sport or one activity. So you have the 8-year-old girl that will only dance, or the 8-year-old boy that will only play baseball. And this is usually counterproductive to developing physical literacy. This is called early specialization. So what you want to do is you want to help kids engage in as many different activities as possible in as many different environments as possible. So on the ground, on snow, it might not be as easy in your part of the world to have activities in snow, but here in Banff, in the Canadian Rockies, it's quite easy, as well as in the water and in the air. For example, trampoline or jumping from a diving board. Now, it comes down to another very simple concept, which is that these experiences should be positive and fun. And that's the only way that children want to do them over and over again, which is what we define as their motivation. If they have fun, they will do something over and over again and become proficient. It's also, if these experiences are positive and fun, kids will want to challenge themselves to become better at them, to keep doing them to a higher level. And this is where the confidence comes from. And finally, the key element in all of this is that as kids are doing these fun activities that are positive, there's a skills component. A good example for me is about 5 years ago, my kids are 12 and 15 now, and about 5 years ago, we bought them juggling balls. And, it was really interesting to watch the progression from struggling to juggle to finally figuring it out. And the moment, and I'm thinking of my son right now, the moment my son figured out how to do it, the pleasure he felt at his success, and then he basically wanted to do it more and more and more, and for a period of time, that's all he did. and he became better and better. So he developed the competency, the confidence, and then the motivation to juggle, and that's really what it comes down to. One thing that we know also, when you look at this slide, there's a lot of information there, even though this is a simpler definition or explanation of physical literacy. Here at Active for Life, our audience are parents and educators and coaches. And what we've learned by communicating with these audiences over the years is that you really need to take all the jargon, all the scientific names and so on, and make things very simple and very clear. So what we've done is we've taken everything we've learned about physical literacy and we've developed one definition, which is this one. Physical literacy is when kids have developed the skills and confidence to be physically active for life. And if you notice, we've got skills, we've got confidence, and the one thing that is not in this definition is the motivation. But what we've realized is that if someone is doing something for the rest of their life, in this case to be physically active for life, well, it alludes to the motivation to do so. Now, let me complete my definition or explanation about physical literacy. I'll give you an example. So let's take Jane, who's a little girl who's maybe 8 to 10 years old, and let's go back in Jane's life, and early on, she never really was involved in many activities that got her to develop any skills. So maybe at 11, she's on the playground at school, and there's a game of dodgeball going on. And her first reaction is not to want to join because she doesn't have the confidence. She never had the skills. And then she's coaxed by her friends to join, and at one point she decides, she takes a leap of faith, and she joins the game, and someone gives her the ball, and she takes a few steps, but she's never really learned to throw the ball, and she misses her throw and she falls. What will happen? Well, most likely other kids will make fun of her. So that will turn into a very negative experience. And what we've realized is that kids who live these experiences, because they didn't develop the skills and the confidence early in life, will most likely give up on certain activities. So in this case, it's very possible that Jane will give up on any kind of game that involves throwing a ball. So if you combine this with the fact that she might have never learned to swim or never actually learned to run properly, she might in effect become inactive for life. So really, physical literacy is not about developing athletes. It's really about giving children the opportunity and the boldness to develop a series of different skills early in life and to be confident with these skills so that for the rest of their life they have a huge series of options to get active and keep moving. So, which brings us to our second question: why is physical literacy vital for kids today? And the thought that came to me when I was thinking about this was, you know, it's really interesting. I was talking about physical literacy the other day and to a group of people, and one person, an older person, told me, well, why did you need to create a new word or a new concept? You know, when I was young, kids just played. I mean, why would you need to call it physical literacy? And this is really descriptive of where we're at as a society. You know, we put ourselves in a situation where we had to create a word or a concept for something that kids have been doing forever. And you know, if you really go down to the essence of it, moving is in our DNA. We were basically built to move and born to move, and we've survived, and we've succeeded as a species until very recently in time by moving a lot. And one thing that science tells us is that when we don't move, things go wrong. Our body are basically, you know, do much better when we move. So if I go from this ancient picture to one that was a series of pictures from the late 50s, early 60s, the one consistent fact is that kids have always moved. And if you look at these pictures, there's a few things that are interesting. First of all, there's no parents. Second of all, these are all intuitive games. So these kids are playing games without any structure. There's no one creating a league or a parent coaching, telling them what to do. These are intuitive games being played by kids. Now, the other thing that's really interesting about these games is that you'll see they require different skills. And there's also an element where kids are not overprotected. And until very recently, this is how kids learn to move. And that's the key concept here. When I was born in 1963, and when I was young, I would go out and I would usually join a group of anywhere from 5 to 12 kids on my street, and a game would start, any game, all kinds of different games, depending on the season and depending on our moods that day. One of my favorite was a game called Kick the Can, which basically is kind of a hide and seek game where there's a can, and to liberate yourself, you have to kick the can. So when I was younger, I became a big fan and actually quite proficient at kick the can. And the way I did, I observed older kids going through the motion of the game. So I would see an older kid run, kick the can, and then I would try to do the same, and that's how I learned to move. That's to run, jump, skip, hit a ball with a bat, ride a bike, and so on. But something has happened over the years, and it has happened really in terms of our history very recently. Actually, in the blink of an eye, we went from learning to move through play to playing different games. And to summarize this is that the concept of play has moved from outside and active like it used to be to inside and inactive. So don't get me wrong, kids are still born with the desire, the instinct to play. In many mammals, lions are born with the instinct to play, for example, primates and so on. But what we're not born with are the skills. So if you think about this for a second, we used to learn to move by playing outside, very active games. Now kids learn different games. They learn inactive games. They're masters at the iPad or their iPhone or whatever game is popular today. But they don't learn the physical skills like we used to. So we need a mindset shift in our society. And the mindset shift is very simple. We need to realize that kids are born with the capacity to move, but not the skills. So when play moves from the outside and active to inside and inactive, something has to be done to overcome this situation. If kids are not going to learn to move by playing, we need to help them do so. And, I watch kids today, and if you have a computer problem, you go to a 7-year-old and they will solve your problem. And those are the skills they learn. So what? Well, this situation, the fact that kids don't learn to move early in life, leads to very interesting outcomes. So this is an article we published a couple of years ago that relates a study that was done in the UK. And basically the researchers, the scientists realized that there are many 4-year-old kids out there who couldn't crawl, that were actually behind in their crawling and walking skills. And the reason they found is that not only do kids don't play anymore, but they're driven and pushed and carried everywhere. So we're not talking about skills to become, to play baseball in the major, or to play in the NFL or to be on the PGA, but we're talking about basic fundamental skills. And what's really scary is that if kids don't learn these skills early in life and they don't develop the confidence to be active and move early in life, then they're behind for the rest of their life. So to summarize all of this, this is why we need physical literacy in today's society. And what I'll do now is I'm going to go to our website, Active for Life, and you see here there's a screen of exactly where I'm going to go on our website. So it's, if you get a copy of the presentation, you'll remember where to find. What I'm going to bring you to is what we call our infographic. So this is our website, Active for Life, and you see we've got a series of different articles about different topics. And, you know, they're not sport-oriented. They're really, some are, some aren't, but really the focus is to engage parents in different avenues on how to raise physically literate kids. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to our navigation bar at the top, and here I'm going to stop on physical literacy. And under physical literacy, you've got articles and resources, but I'm just going to click on physical literacy, and this will bring us to what we call our infographic. So this is an infographic we developed to explain what is physical literacy. And you've got our definition here. Physical literacy is when kids have developed the skills and confidence to be physically active for life. And then below it, you've got the life cycle, which, you know, it starts in infancy, develops through life, because physical literacy is a lifelong process. And what's really important is that kids acquire the fundamentals early on, and that they keep developing their level of physical literacy through life. And as we know, physically active kids become physically active parents, and quite often physically active parents raise physically active kids. Now, what's really interesting, I'll make this a bit bigger, is physically literate children are more likely to be physically active. And there are huge benefits. As I said earlier, we're designed to move, we're built to move, and when we don't move, things go wrong. But when we do move, things get better. So kids that are physically active have increased self-esteem, they're happier, they do better at school, they've got reduced risk of heart disease, stroke, cancer, diabetes, and lo and behold, they make more money in the end, which is really interesting. So I mean, our purpose to put this infographic in place is simple, is to demonstrate the connection between physical literacy and the well-being of children. And then what we do a bit lower down in the infographic is to explain how physical literacy is developed. It's a very simple progression. You really encourage early movement, expand on play and keep it fun, increase the focus on fundamental movement skills, and introduce more complex skills at the age of 8 to 12. So you see that everything we do is really about defining a pathway to developing physical literacy. A few things that you might find interesting if you go to this, this infographic. First of all, you can download it and print it for your classroom or anywhere you want to put it, but you've got two versions here that you can download and print. But there's also a few articles here that are really interesting. And the one that might be interesting for you in your sector is this one called Building Your Child's Brain. It's like building a house. This was a series of articles written by Professor Don Clark from Montreal University in Calgary. And Professor Clark is a specialist at the University Center for Child Wellbeing in Calgary, and she specializes in early education, early childhood education. And she wrote 6 articles that really clearly defines the relationship between physical literacy and early childhood development. And these are really interesting to read, and we found them to be quite popular actually with parents. So I'll come back to my presentation. So as you can see, we have a problem. Kids don't learn to move, and these has all kinds of repercussion on their entire life. So the concept of physical literacy was created to overcome this issue, and it leads to a series of benefits for kids throughout their life. So the final question I want to answer is what resources are available. And here my comment, my thinking as I was building this presentation is something that's really important. over the years, we've worked with many child care and daycares and so on, and we've realized that really you don't need to be sporty to help kids develop physical literacy. And that's an important concept. One of the people we have on staff, one of our editors at Active for Life, used to call herself the non-sporty mom. And when I actually asked her to join our team, she said, well, I can't work for Active for Life. I'm not sporty. I don't like sport. And I said, well, that's exactly why we need you on staff, because this is not about just being sporty. It's really about developing fundamental skills in children that will help them not only move better, but also think better and be happier. So to do this, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to two sections of our website. So there, again, if you get a copy of my presentation, you'll know exactly where to find these. So I'll go back to the website. There we go. So the first section, the first resource that might be of interest is called Activities. So in our navigation bar, you go to Activities. And this was developed mostly for parents, but I think it could be very useful in daycares and so on. And what it is really a series of activities that you can sort. Let me make this a bit bigger. That you can sort by age. So if I choose the age 5, for example, in the skill of balance, then the website will basically identify all the activities that are proper, age appropriate for kids that are 5 years old to develop balance. And as you can see, these are all pretty fun activities. And they're designed in a way to be simple, very simple instruction, requirements, etc., and they give the exact benefit of the activity. So this is in our activity section. Now the other resource that might be of interest is under something called Pro Resource on our navigation bar. And you'll see a series of different options. So I'll just show you this one, activities for 0 to 3 years old. And what we've done there is over time, we focused on parents at first, but we realized after about a year in existence that many professionals were coming to our website. And we asked them, what do you need in your daycare, in your after-school program, in your school, in your sport program, etc.? What do you need to help develop physical literacy? And they started asking us, and we started producing these resources. For example, we've got activities for babies 0 to 1 year old. We've got activities for 1 to 3 year old, and these are pretty much designed in like a lesson plan, or like well, lesson plan is not really appropriate for this age group, but more as a descriptor for someone to be able to deliver these activities. It gives you the variation benefits, etc. So they're really easy to use. You just download them, print them. We've also developed what we call lesson plans for older kids. I'll just bring you to this this section. And what's really interesting here is we've partnered with an organization called 60-Minute Kids Club, who produce some really great videos that explain each and every one of these skills. So if we take balance, for example, you go to instructional videos, and you'll see, I mean, this is a bit long. I won't show you the entire video, but you'll get a sense of what you have there. Really a video that explains the skills in detail. So that's a really helpful tool to help you learn. So again, I won't show the entire video, but you get the essence of the instruction found. What the 60-Minute Kids Club also did is they created what they call their assessment videos. So these are very simple videos that shows 4 levels of proficiency in those different skills. Like in this case, you've got balancing on one leg, initial, emerging, competent, and proficient. So it gives you an idea if you need to know where kids are at and so on. This is a very simple tool to assess those skills. And again, for each age group, you've got a series of different lesson plans that you can implement in different sectors. I'll show you one quickly. They're very simple in the way they're built. You've got everything you need and really easy to apply. Now, the other thing that we've got here that I'm really proud of, I think it's actually very cool, it's called a lesson plan builder. So I'll go to lesson plan builder right now. And this is a tool that helps you build a lesson plan in minutes. So the first thing you need to do is choose your age group. So let's say 3 to 5 years old. And then you need to choose skills. So you could do a session or a lesson plan just on balance, but let's just for the fun of it choose all three skills. Now what the tool will do is offer you a series of different activities for each skill that are all color coded. So in this case, and with an explanation, a quick explanation of what each activity is. So let's choose one in this, one in balance, one in locomotion, and 2 in object manipulation. So now what I've got is an idea right here of what my lesson would be at. So I'm at 29 minutes. And then I've got 4 activities that I can, change the order basically. I could write the name of the organization, your name, group name, some notes, etc. And then you can actually publish the lesson plan. And it created a lesson plan to your needs instantly, so in a matter of a few minutes. So this is a tool that's become quite popular with many educators around in different sectors. It's an easy way to produce a lesson plan to deliver content. Okay, being mindful of the time. Now, the other thing that we've got on our website is something called additional resource, and that might be of great interest to you as well. What we've done is we continuously look at different resources from around the world, and we put in here in this page resources that we find of quality. One that might be of interest was developed by Montreal University, and I'll go to this resource. It loads, it takes a bit of time to load. It's a bit of a big file, but this was developed by the Early Childhood Center at university specifically for daycares. And you'll see the sense, get a sense of what I'm talking about here. So this is 83 pages long, so there's tons of resource in here. And it shows all kinds of different things on how to deliver activities in the daycare setting. So this is a great resource for your sector. And again, you can find this under our resource section under additional resources. So I'll come back to my presentation. These are free resources that you can find on Active for Life that you can share with anyone you want and you can put in play right now. I've also added to my presentation the URL of each of these sections, so to make them easier to find. Now, again, I want to share one idea, one concept. Developing physical literacy is pretty simple. And I'm going to summarize by using the example of the Banff Daycare. So I live in the town of Banff, and we have the Banff Daycare Society. And the Banff Daycare Society was introduced to the concept of physical literacy a few years ago, and they reached out to us. And, it became a matter of putting in place a few pieces of the puzzle. So the first step was awareness, which is really important, and this is what we're doing now. The second step was for the Banff Daycare to combine our resources, our free resources that I showed you earlier, with a bit of education. So what they did is they hired one person to do a 1-hour workshop with their staff, with their educators. And this workshop was designed around the tools we have for free on the website and some of these other tools I showed you from around the world. So this person came in and just basically educated the educators on how to apply these tools and talked about the importance and so on of developing physical literacy. So before I did this chat, as I was finalizing this slide presentation today, I called the leader of the Banff Daycare Society and I asked her, I said, okay, I'm going to talk to people in your sector and in your field. what's one message I should know? What's one thing I should know before I talk to them about the process that you've lived at your daycare? And Karen is the name of the leader. She said, well, it's very simple. What we realize is that many of our educators didn't feel confident in developing physical literacy in children because they didn't perceive themselves as being athletic or sporty. And but with a bit of education and simple tools, now we've integrated developing physical literacy in already scheduled games and playtime. And quite frankly, it's great because the kids are having a blast, and we know we're doing something really good. So the last thought I want to share with you is this will be the topic of the next webinar that will follow this one. It's about engaging people into this concept of physical literacy. And one thing that we've discovered over the years of Active for Life is that it's really a quiet majority that's out there that we need to engage. And what we mean by this is that when you start talking about this concept, a great majority of people understand what it is, and they also understand quickly why it matters to kids. Some people might be opposed to it sometimes, but it's really a vocal minority. So, you know, really I encourage you to develop physical literacy, to make it aware, to be aware of it, and to actively develop physical literacy in children, because most people will see the benefit. So thank you very much. I really enjoyed my time, and I hope that my French accent was still understandable for you in the States. Thank you. Hello?
All right, thank you so much, Richard, for sharing your knowledge and experience with us. Thanks, everyone,
You're welcome.
Thanks for taking part in our webinar today, and we hope you enjoyed it. And we hope that you'll take this information back and use it and share it with your colleagues and friends. The slides, the resources, and a recording of the webinar will be posted to the Be Active Kids website. It will be under the resource page, so please go check it out when you have some time. And also, we encourage everyone to join us for the second part of the webinar. We will welcome back Richard on May 19th at 1 p.m., and that will be engaging staff and parents in physical literacy. For more information on physical literacy, feel free to contact myself. I'm Evie Houts from Be Active Kids, or you can contact Richard from Active for Life, and here's our contact information. Do we have any questions out there?
I have a quick question about when things shifted from outside to inside play. If there's a period of time or a generation when that really happened. Just working with adults, I see a lot of physical illiteracy as well. So I was wondering if there's a section of time that red flags you as, hey, anyone past this age range likely is lacking this literacy.
That's a very good question. I think in my, well, I don't think there's a specific moment. I think it was progressive, but the progression was pretty rapid as soon as the internet and handheld devices became the norm, combined with some other factors like overbearing parents protecting children, fear of kids getting injured, and so on. So it's like a perfect storm of different elements. I would say it began in the late 80s and really accelerated over the last 10 years. So I hope I answered your question. So not one key moment, but a series of elements that came into play all at the same time. But you are right, there are many adults that are physically illiterate, and I think it has to do a bit with the concept of perception of physical education in school, you know, and the knowledge that maybe to be physically active you have to be sporty, and it's really not the case. And this is what we're trying to overcome now. I see a comment I'd like to speak to. One thing that is key also is it's not just about being active, but there's a huge, in Canada, for example, it snows, we have ice, and we have many older people falling and breaking bones later in life. And there are studies coming out now to show that there's a correlation between adults that are physically literate and physically active throughout their life and the risk of injuries in older at a later time in life. So the more active and the more physically literate people are, the less they are likely to injure themselves later in life as well. Any more questions? Okay. I guess I will mute my mic and